Hi, how's it going? This is President of Hollywood for YouTube. I am here to do a read-along review of Benight, Beguile. Book 6, Chapter 1, After the Dawn. Evie's heart was pounding as she stood in Terramore's main sitting room in front of her in-laws. They stared back, faces pale with fright, seeing the woman they thought they buried now alive, in their living room covered in dirt, dust, and debris from her grave. A ghost, Rebecca whispered to herself. Caspian lifted a brow. Celeste stepped forward cautiously to get a better look at her former best friend. Evie, is that really you? How, how could, how are you alive? Suddenly someone who knew the darkest secret of the family feared the worst. Was Evie now like Sebastian, one of the undead, one of the creatures that roam the world under the cover of night, to eat, breathe, thrive only in the darkest of shadows? In Evie's mind, she knew what to say next. Her whole body told her Jacqueline was in that house. It was intuition, some kind of power that linked her brain with the woman who did this to her. She opened her mouth to ask, "Where is that bitch, Jacqueline Gray?" But nothing actually came out as she thought it would. In her exhaustion, her eyes rolled to the back of her head, and Evie fainted in the center of the gilded drawing room of Terramore House. The woman, the women gasped. Jacob and Caspian rushed to Evie's limp body. "She's breathing, but completely out," Caspian replied. "Dr. Ward, someone get Peter Ward up here," Rebecca shouted. Standing outside the drawing room, just outside the entrance, hiding in the shadows, Gabriel's governess and sign language tutor, Cora Taylor, chewed on her nails. She knew this was the perfect fodder her brother, the reporter Baxter, was foaming at the mouth for. He had been begging her to give him a scoop of all the ins and outs of Terramore and the Lord family. He wanted dirt, and Evie literally brought it in on her person, straight from the grave. "Evie! Evie, wake up! Evie! Evie, wake up!" Jacob said, tapping her once perfectly peach-toned cheek was now the color of pristine pale page of a notebook. As Celeste rushed off into a different room to call Dr. Ward, she passed her brother Jonathan, who had just rushed down straight from his room where he had made love with his new flame, Jacqueline Gray. The commotion of Evie's room broke up their intimate moment as Celeste passed him in a blur of dark, cold chiffon, a maroon underskirts. He grabbed his sister's form. "What the devil is this?" he asked as she stared back at him, tears welling up in her deep brown eyes. "What's all the shouting?" "It's Evie. She's alive, Johnny. She's alive, and she's passed out on the drawing room floor. I have to call the doctor," Celeste said as she unlatched herself from Jonathan's grasp. Jonathan gulped and slowly crept out to the open double door of the drawing room to peek in. Cora covered further into shadows unseen. As the attention shifted rightfully to Evie, Jacqueline peered over the staircase. Mezzanine, the writing was on the wall for her if Evie was alive. She then quickly snuck out of the mansion and rushed off into the Terramore forest to hide. Soon she believed the hunt would be on for her head. To give her a refresher real quick, Evie was put under a spell by Jacqueline when she was in the sanitarium, the hospital sanitarium, where she was put there by Jacob and Celeste, because they said she was losing her mind. Were they wrong for doing it? Yes. But she sort of somewhat was, because she was acting funny, because again Jacqueline was putting her under a lot of spells. And in the sanitarium, she put her under a deep sleep spell where she would seem like she was dead unless someone touched her skin. No one did. And they buried her. Sebastian, her once, love and father of her child, who's a vampire, saved her, and we didn't know by the end of the previous chapter what had happened to Sebastian. So that's my refresher there. Probably left out some things. I don't think I did. Don't think it. Okay, here we go. The next day in the center of town, as a cool breeze crushed across the island, Fatima Braga flipped through the pages of a book nervously. Her mind was unable to concentrate on the pages in front of her, or even the bright sunny day that was just outside her door. The snow had melted off weeks ago. Spring was now burning in the air, but in Fatima's heart winter never left. Tossing the book onto a small side table and getting up in a heap of dark taffeta, Fatima decided to finally meet her worries face to face. Her worries that resided in the basement of her small house in town. The book room remained open on the table like a wild bass mouth set to a page titled Oloba del Bua. At the bottom of Fatima's basement stairs, 3 small lamps were lit, glowing a yellow warm light onto Philip Braga's sleeping body. Fatima's nephew, actually, sure, had been held there since he was attacked by a wolf on Good Island. She slowly made her way down the steps and found him peacefully sleeping with his wound dressings ready to be changed. Those wounds, violent bites from the wolf, were healing, well, thanks to Fatima's care, but she knew holding him safe in her basement was only going to temporary as they waited full moon. She tightened the restraints around his waist and ankles. They were locked into iron hooks that fed deep into the rock that made up the floor of the basement. Philip rolled over and opened his eyes that met his caring Tia Fatima's. Boom dia, she greeted him in their native Portuguese. He groaned, I don't want to be here anymore. This has to be. I told you of what is to come once the moon becomes new and full again. Philip, there is no changing the dangers that will occur when your body finally feels the pale blue beams of the moon, she explained. Your superstitions are going to get the best of you, Tia. None of these things will happen. You know it, and I know it, Philip replied. She pursued her lips and perched her lips, lifted a brow. Very well, then get up. If you're so sure that none of this will happen, as I explained, get up. Reach for these locks and let yourself out. Fatima tossed the key over to Philip. It landed on his bare belly. He looked at her, her eyes steely and unflinching. He could see every wrinkle in her face, not a single flicker of an eye or a blink, her body solid and unyielding. Philip slapped the keys off his stomach, and they crashed down to her feet in frustration. This is the aunt I wish I had back when I was growing up. Where was she? Where was she to come to my rescue when all went wrong? There were plenty of times I needed you, he said, his voice sounding like a broken-hearted child. His words caused Fatima's face to finally soften. She sat on his bed and cupped one of his hands with one of hers. Her free hand touched the wolf's wounds on his body through the bandages, seeing that the blood had dried. In all other families, the two Bragos should have been close. She his only aunt, he her only nephew, even if it was only through short visits or letters. They should have been in each other's lives. In any other family, they would have been. All throughout his childhood, Philip had so many dreams of his aunt in Lisbon. He loved her so much from afar and wished to have gone to Lisbon to live with her years ago. Of course, those were fantasies of a child living with a strict father who only tried over and over again to keep his son far, far away from his Fatima. The scandal that shrouded Fatima's past and destroyed her relationship with her brother was the final nail in the coffin. Philip's father refused to ever let Philip even speak of her as he grew. And when finally, when she finally did leave Lisbon and moved to Welshport, she kept herself hidden so she could be near Philip without any pushback from her brother, his father. She was in the village for years, hiding her secret scandal. An ex-nun who had an affair with a priest. Philip never knew the truth and never knew her face, as it had been unrecognizable to him with age and time. The affair, which began before Philip was born, left Fatima a black sheep, unwanted, pushed aside, shamed. I was always near my boy, she said softly, even when you didn't know I was near. There was silence in the basement. Philip's mind began to wander. Am I going to die? He asked suddenly, finally accepting Fatima's prophecy of a full moon. She frowned. Stop that. No, you are not. We will keep you here safe from the moon and the transition, and I'll search for a way to make sure you never go through it again. There has to be something to make you clean again from the wolf's curse. Uh, bite, but it will take time, my son. You know, um, you know what they say about a werewolf, don't you? There's only one cure. That's a silver bullet. Um, I'm wrong. You sound like my father when you call me that, he smiled. It's almost never called, he almost never called me by my name, always son. Does that bother you when I call you son? She asked. He shook his head. No, I know what you mean. Well, he was my brother, so it makes sense for us to use the same vernacular, she replied, shrugging off the small talk. Still holding his hand in hers, she smiled to comfort him. As the pain from the wolf's bite returned, he squeezed her hand back. Do you ever regret what you did? Do you ever regret never leaving the convent for the right way to have your own family yet? She paused before answering and looked her nephew in the eyes. They were deep, dark brown. They seemed like two big pools of chestnut and chocolate. His eyes, they were her eyes. She had yearned for this type of closeness to him. The day he was born, she squeezed his hand back and simply replied, yes. He smiled back, but did not reply. Fatima got up from his bed, cleaned his wounds a bite a bit, and told him she'd be back in a few minutes with something to eat. She floated back upstairs and closed the basement door behind her. She, her mind racing as soon as she landed inside the small kitchen where the basement stairs led. Her past was coming back to haunt her in a way she never thought. A secret she held so deep in her mind, a secret she thought died alone, alone, along with Philip's father, and mother, was bubbling back up into the surface, and she wasn't sure how it would become exposed. The truth of her scandal was not only she was a nun who fell in love with a priest, there was more. There was so much more, and there was a true dagger in the heart of the Braga family. Fatima and the priest had conceived a child, a boy they called Philip. Oh shit! Yeah, that one is a bit shocking. That's a shocker. That's a spicy meatball. Um, Mary paced back and forth in her small cottage living room on Good Island. She couldn't help fear the worst for her partner Philip. Where was he? What had happened to him after he was attacked by the wolf? Why had none of her magical methods helped her find him? Her pacing stopped in front of a large window that she looked out to thick forest towards Welshport Island. She faint trace of a spinning lighthouse from the most western point of the larger island hit her steel blue eyes, and it dawned on her. He's there. He's got to be there, she whispered to herself. We should try again, a voice said from behind. Mary turned, and it was her 15-year-old daughter, Charlotte, who had come to live with her. Morgan Thorne the young man who had come with Charlotte, seeking refuge away from the Lord family after he too was left in the mansion by his mother, Genevieve, followed the young heiress into the room. I don't think it's safe, Morgan said to Charlotte. We just talked about this, he adding, hinting at a conversation the two teens had in private. Charlotte shook her head at her friend, but Philip is in danger. You said it yourself that the wolf that he saved you from ravaged him. I saw his wounds hurt myself, Morgan. How can we just pretend he's not out there suffering? It's been weeks. All right, you two enough, Mary said, ever the stoic mother. She walked over to Morgan, whose worry could be felt from in the air all around him. He feared the worst. Philip feared the return of the wolf. Almost killed him even more. Mary put a hand on his shoulder to comfort the young man, who seemed lost in the world all around him, more ways than one. I know all of this is frightening. I have to agree with Charlotte. Don't try something again, nothing. Or something again, anything. We lose Philip forever. I can't allow that. What do you think you and Charlotte will do? He asked. Charlotte gulped. I can try. I can try to locate him psychically. I've been too worried to do it again, like the first time. But we have to try. I'm willing to go there again. Do you think you can do it, darling? Mary asked. I know that each time you tap into that gift, you become incredibly weak afterwards. I'm worried about how much it takes out of you. You're so young, it's very draining. I want to try, the young girl confirmed. Mary smiled proudly. I want you both to understand something before we begin, Mary began. I'm practically a novice at all this as well. We're learning together. Whatever happens, good or bad, if we find him or not, it's not your fault. I want you to know that this is a complicated situation, and we can't just go into the village and search for him. Even though I know he's there, he has to be anywhere. It wouldn't work like that. No one would understand us, and to be quite honest, they may think us insane. The idea of a group of people searching for someone who may or may not have been attacked by a wolf and is walking the world like nothing would be very strange to them. That's why tapping into the my gifts my mother bestowed on us is really the only way we can do this. The outside world, they don't understand the world of the supernatural. Even I don't. Not everything. They already think we're evil, Morgan said. They think all the lords are evil. We're not the lords, Mary explained. We are judged much different. I am Charlotte, reminded them. Mary smiled. Well, my sweet, you're their better angel. Charlotte hugged her mother, a feeling and connection she had longed for all her life. Listen, Mary, begin again. If something should go wrong now or in the future, do not blame yourself. None of this is your fault. You understand? None of it. The youngsters nodded. I'll try, Charlotte replied. Morgan looked at Charlotte, then at Mary, and nodded. Me too. Mary grabbed her daughter's hand and pulled her into another room that was dark and silent. There, they both sat on the floor. Morgan, who followed carefully, lit candles. They were placed all around in a circle as the two women with special powers clasped their hands together and lifted them up as they were the arms of a bridge. Morgan lit the largest candle in the room and slid it between mother and daughter, brightening up their faces with the glow of an orange light. Close your eyes now, Charlotte, and let me into your mind, where I can follow. Mary instructed. Charlotte nodded and did as her mother said, combining Mary's new-found powers of witchcraft and Charlotte's psychic abilities made them uniquely stronger in the world of the supernatural together. They were a creative team that could do anything if they knew how to control their strengths. Uh, Mary then began to chant in a spell to enter the daughter's mind where she could reach for Philip. Benight, Nunic, ad inverdum, some super. Okay, I don't know if I read that right. Right, so sorry. She followed a blinking light in her mind that led her telepathically into Charlotte's powerful but young psychic mind. The 15-year-old was still too young to control all she could do alone. Her mother, which needed to guide her even if she too knew her powers. The light blinked and blinked in the darkness, the two lines joining. This was like a tunnel that burrowed into the psychics of two worlds. and as Mary entered, she saw an almost identically Welshport village um, that mirrored the real one just beyond the small dock of Beguile. Charlotte was there too. "Where do we go?" Charlotte asked. "Feel," Mary answered. Charlotte replied with a strange look into her face. "Feel with your heart and your mind now with your hands." Charlotte looked out onto the ghostly empty village. Streets of Welshport. She didn't know if she should lead her mother left or right, um, towards the center of town or towards the edge near the sea. She didn't know what to look for, what message was to come to her. Everything felt so strange and void. Um, "I don't know," Charlotte said. Mary, "Feel," Mary repeated. Charlotte put two hands up to her chest, felt her heart beating faster, faster, and faster. Then, as the minutes seemed to tick away faster and faster, searching her heart beat, they both heard distant and violent howl of a wolf in the distance. "It's not real," Mary said, noticing Charlotte's fearful reaction. "It's something in the mind telling us to stay away. We have to follow it." Mary grabbed Charlotte's hand and began to take her towards the sound of the howling wolf, but Charlotte was stuck in her position. "Charlotte, what is it? We have to follow the wolf." "It's the sign we're looking for," Mary said. Charlotte said nothing, only pointed to a black shadow off in the distance of the streets. When Mary turned, the shadow almost instantly rushed them both in a fierce and wild wind blackness that engulfed them both. The horrible sound of screaming was in the wind, people crying, blood-curdling screams, deathly howls that filled the air all around them. Mary clutched on to Charlotte, who felt as if those black shadows of wind were lifting her off the ground. And then suddenly, as quickly as it came, the blackness swirled around them and formed into the shadow person again directly in front of them. The face of the shadow or looked as if it as if it were hiding behind spiders' webs. The eyes were familiar to both. Mary in particular felt as if she had seen them before, maybe once, maybe twice. Then the shadows lifted and revealed the face of Fatima Braga. "Go," she screamed at them as her arms lifted into the air. And again the dark winds blew, this time so hard it knocked the two of the women to the floor, and then they hit the ground. Both awoke back in the small cottage on the floor of the dark room, surrounded by the circle of candles. When they woke, Morgan was standing in the room holding baby Caleb. The older boy, shaken with fear, did not find him. Did you find him? Did you find Philip? He asked as the baby cooed. Charlotte stood up, and a frightened look washed all over her face. The wolf in her visceral vision was not just a sign for them to follow. Charlotte could feel it was something else. In fact, she could feel the wolf was someone else together. She kept this to herself. "Well," Morgan asked, um, "he's with Fatima," answered her, breath short and her mind racing. "He's with Fatima." Uh, Nick and Aurora arrived to see Evie. Sorry. Back at Terramore House, Aurora and Nicholas arrived to see Evie. They rushed in with the head housekeeper, Jane. As they passed into a large chamber that led to the back private staircase, there stood newlyweds Rebecca and Jacob. Aurora froze, seeing Caspian, the man who, while possessed by a demon, soaked her mind with frightening thoughts and trickery, and even convinced her to sleep with him, conceiving a child in the process. Aurora, Caspian said, greeting, woman he unwillingly tormented for months. We're here to see Evie, that's all, Nick said as he tugged in Aurora's arm, but she stood firm. Congratulations are in order, Aurora said nothing to Nick. I hear Rebecca and Caspian are married. Oh, good for them. Can we go now? Nick replied. I hope you're both happy. After all that's happened, that's all anyone can ask for, isn't it? Happiness, Aurora said. We were very sorry to hear the loss of your child, Rebecca said. I know firsthand the pain of the loss of such an innocent. Thank you, Aurora replied. Caspian began, unsure of what to say. He knew nothing he could say in his current state of good sense of mind could make up the horrors he inflicted on Aurora and Rebecca when he was possessed. I wish I could have helped or made things right faster, he said. Aurora felt his sincerity and Rebecca's returning jealousy. She knows you're sorry, Caspian. We all know you have other issues at hand that impaired your judgment. Sorry, I'll say, Nick said. We just want to see Evie, and then we'll leave, Aurora replied, doing her best to get out of the awkward situation with the man who fathered her child while possessed by a demon. If you need anything, Aurora, anything at all, please let us know, Cassian said, catching himself showing affection again. Aurora, she'll be fine, Nick replied, pulling Aurora away from the group. As he and Aurora followed Jane deeper into the chamber that led them up and into the small apartments in the mansion where Evie's suite was, Aurora went along, turned to look one last time at Cassian, who locked eyes with her. Aurora quickly turned away and vanished up the stairs. Upstairs in her old room, Evie tossed and turned. A fever had taken over her body. She couldn't open her eyes, yet the sleeping woman felt as if she could see everything all around her. Her hallucinations were strong. She murmured in her sleep and groaned with anger over everything that had happened to her in the last few months. Then her eyes flipped open, bloodshot and tearful. She saw standing there Dr. Peter Ward. Mouth opened and almost like a mad woman, everything that she had suffered at the hands of the witch Jacqueline Gray spilled out. Peter was locked in a trance as she recounted her tale. Then her fever once again took over to sleep. Peter made her more comfortable with cold towels and comfy pillows. His heart ached for the young woman after all she had gone through. But was it true? Was there some sort of madwoman witch out there doing the horrible things as Evie explained? Or was there really a medication that caused Evie's horrible sleep paralysis? What was even more strange and confusing was Evie's account of Sebastian Lord, a man the whole world thought dead from an explosion, was the one that saved her. Doctor, a voice said from the door. It was Jane Donnelly, the housekeeper, Paramore. Evie's family is here, she added. Peter nodded and left the bedroom and followed Jane to the adjoining that used to be Gabriel's nursery. How is she, Doctor? Aurora asked as she quickly stood up to meet Peter. She's sleepy now. She has a mild fever and Out of consciousness, the doctor explained. How has she been given any medication? Evie's brother Nick asked. Yes, to a new doctor who worked under Dr. Ward. Peter nodded again. Just to help her sleep. Nothing too strong, as I am hoping her body will fight the fever off as natural as possible. She's been through something very traumatic. Her whole system is fighting itself. It could just be stress induced. After what she told me happened, I don't see being more than that. What did she say happened? Nick asked. Well, for one, she knows who she was drugged, but it wasn't by you, Dr. Jordan. In fact, she says it was by, Peter paused, by whom? Aurora asked impatiently. This is where things get very strange. That it would keep this between the three of us, as this family has a penchant for putting people in the madhouse when they're not truly mad. Evie said a witch. Had someone put a curse on her, making her look as though the medication had killed her. Then she was buried. She came to underground only to be saved by her husband. What do you mean, her husband? Sebastian? That's impossible, Aurora replied. She must have been dreaming. A nightmare. None of that could possibly have happened. Evie was accidentally given too much of a drug by a nurse. The nurse died by suicide in grief for her mistake. I was there. I know this for sure. Wasn't a witch, for God's sake, Nick explained. I would agree with you, Dr. Jordan, but your sister was very adamant of what she experienced, and I was not about to challenge what she believes is true, or not now at least, Peter answered back. And you're sure no one or family heard this, or I was alone with her to the brow. I wonder what she said when she walked into the house. They said she opened her mouth to speak, but nothing came out, and she fainted. Surely, she had mentioned the rest of this, Jacob would have had her in fast padded wagon back to Churchill Green. Peter said, mentioning the village's new mental hospital on the side of Oak Hospital. All right, just keep this between us. Can you do that, Dr. Ward? Aurora asked. Peter nodded. He could. I want her safe too. You can replied. We see her this way, Ward answered back. As the three left through the interior door that connected to the small drawing room to Evie's bedroom, Caroline Taylor listened from the hallway behind the door with a great worry over what she would have to do with the information. This moment of Ward family intrigue was exactly what she was sent to Terramore House to uncover and expose. Caroline was a mole. But she wasn't alone in that hallway. Jane Donnelly, too, watched from a different angle, wondered just what Caroline was doing, eavesdropping on the family. Following morning, Jacqueline Gray felt like a dead woman walking. She paced back and forth. A small room of awkward thicket. And pictured seeing the flickering red flame of torches through the glass of the cottage windows as villagers trudged through the forest set for her hanging. It was inevitable. The witch believed that once Evie explained what Jacqueline had done to her, how she had done it, her life would end. Now, Sebastian, the man she loved, could not be reached, no matter how hard Jacqueline tried using her powers. Whatever happened to him is gone. No amount of magical powers or telepathy and mind tapping could find him for her. How could he have just vanished this way? Where did he go? Where was he put? Jacqueline thought to herself, recalling the visions she had after sleeping with a man she met in a drunken stupor, Jonathan Davitti. In that vision, a small glimmer of an answer Jonathan had hidden Sebastian away. But where? Where was the man she truly loved? She sat on the floor, her eyes closed, her mind searching for calling Sebastian, using everything she had. For Jacqueline, nothing would work. Not only did Jonathan hide Sebastian in a tomb as payment to his sister Celeste, but Evie did too. Sebastian freed himself and then freed her. Evie had him even better, hit him even better, even deeper. They hid further away where no one could hurt him, find him, take him away, or worse, destroy him for good. But Jacqueline only knew of Jonathan's work, but not the place did it. Frustrated with the lack of explanation and the continued missing Sebastian, Jacqueline banged her head, sorry, banged her hands up against her head and cried out screaming into the emptiness all around her. Then a thought bubbled up in her mind, up in her grief-stricken mind. Jonathan, of course, she said out loud. He was the answer to not only finding Sebastian, but perhaps her own salvation. She had to align herself with him, son of Albert Lord, the brother and brother-in-law to Jacob. His connection to the family that was like royalty in Welshport would keep her from a certain fate of death, if anyone were to believe anything sane. Jacqueline needed to keep this newfound relationship. Jonathan, come her life depended on it. If she failed, then for sure her days were numbered. She walked over to a mirror and dabbled a small bit of rouge in her lips and cheeks and wiped away the tears for Sebastian that stained them. She smiled, a fake smile, practicing for when she encountered Jonathan again. Plumped her soft curls. Hello, I've been thinking of you, she said to her reflection in a sulky voice, as if she were talking to him. Why don't we pick up where we left off? The whole time she played to the mirror, her mind was locked on saving her life. Jonathan was the key. Over in the village, the newest citizens in town, Lucas Morrill, strolled along the seaside of his friend. His friend, a man he called Winter. Winter had been a victim of an awful shipwreck months and months ago, and was found on the black sand shore of an Easter island, archipelago, known as the Ezra's Island, where Lucas was from. Along with Lucas's mother, Sylvina, they discovered Winter was from Welshport, and together they came back in hopes Winter find out who he was and who the woman in his foggy memories was. In town, their mission would pay off as a group of fishermen were yelling and leaping from the dock off their fresh fish trawler to the docks above where Lucas and Winter were walking. What the devil, Winter said under his breath as he noticed the men leaping for joy. What could they be so happy about, Lucas asked. A good catch? Found treasure? Look, they're pulling something up from the water, he replied. No, they're dropping anchor, Lucas noted, as one of the men from the boat leaped back on the adjacent docks and ran up the ramp all the way to the street's side dock where Lucas and Winter were standing. Mate, oh, matey, can it be you? Oh, no, I cannot fisherman said in a Scottish accent. Lucas and Winter looked at each other. You recognize him, Lucas asked happily. Of course I do. This here is Captain Matthew Winterbourne. It is. My God, man, how can you be here? We all thought you and the rest of the crew sank to the bottom of the sea. Did, my God, man. The happy fisherman said, shaking Matthew's hand profusely. Oh, I don't know if it's me, Matthew laughed. I've lost a bit of memory. And, it's you, lad. Back from the brink of a watery grave. The fisherman laughed with a leathery smile that showed a sprinkle of missing teeth. I can imagine you'd lose some of your history. I once knew a man who'd fallen into the sea and was lost for almost 10 years. All those days out on the blue might have been what did it. Into it was, but you really don't remember a thing now. Nothing at all, the fisherman asked. Small bits and pieces, but mostly it's all fog. Hopefully, being here back in this place, I'll begin to remember things. You missed a lot. I've done Miss Evie Jordan back too. You might want to see how she's doing. Family up there in the Tamor trees have always been a bit of a bunch of phantoms. They'd eat that miss up if she'd be all alone. Seeing you back may be the happiness the poor thing needs. The fisherman slapped Matthew on the back and flashed his gappy smile by welcoming him home one more time. Lucas and Matthew stood on the dock in a stillness after hearing the fisherman speak of Evie, a woman of his visions. It couldn't happen better than that, Lucas replied, with a grin as seagulls swirled over them. You really think this Evie Jordan is the woman? Matthew asked. She has to be, Lucas replied, turning to the fisherman again, now back with his mates in the small boat. They seem to think you're this Matthew, and by the looks of it, they're not the only ones, Lucas added, as a small crowd of villagers began to arrive and point to and cheer for the long-lost fisherman. Seems so, Matthew replied, then turned to Lucas, the sun bright on the sky, swimming in a blue of fluffy clouds. Excuse me, Matthew asked the woman of her teenage daughter. Captain, sir, Mr. Winterbourne, she stammered. Is that really you? She asked. It's him. It's really him, the teenager daughter replied. Matthew smiled nervously, realizing his ship's sinking hit the village hard, and left the town broken-hearted. I think so, yes. Can you tell me how to get to Terramore? Matthew asked them, in reference to the Lord family mansion. The woman's face softened, knowing exactly why he needed directions. The whole town knew of his love for Evie Jordan. The whole town knew how much they cared for each other, and how much she had suffered at the hands of a terrible cursed fate with Sebastian. True love story, the fairy tale the whole village believed it was not that of Sebastian Ward, handsome heir of the Ward dynasty, and the beautiful English girl Evie Jordan, the one of the dashing local fisherman Matthew Winterbourne, that same beautiful English girl. Matthew Nevy's was the love to last through the ages. Matthew was one of them. One of the people, one of the locals who had found his heart in the hands of a caring. They were pulling for these two to make it through. all the horrors left in Sebastian's wake. They, the villagers themselves, would be the guide to bring Matthew and Evie back together. The mother and daughter separated and left a gap between them and Matthew and Lucas to walk through and pointed through a growing cast of villagers at the docks, staring. And the villagers, too, parted all and all pointed up towards an enormous canopy of trees in the distance that made up the Terramore Forest where the Lord's family estate of the same name held court. We'll find her, the woman whispered. Matthew smiled and turned to Lucas. I guess this is it. Far away from the morning light in Welshport, a fire burned inside a small store, illuminating a very small London flat. The smell of the damp air filtered through a crack in the front window, where a pale toned curtain lifted slightly in the air as the cool breeze lifted in. Sipping tea in the evening hours on the green sofa was Genevieve Thorne, who had come to London based on Charlotte's psychic premonition. The David Lord had been hiding there all this time, away from the ghost of Welshport, where he was framed for murder of his wife Sabrina. She succeeded in finding a man that had the face of David Lord, but the life the man lived was not the same, at least not as Charlotte saw it in her visions. Like Genevieve, he too was the exact likeness of the other half of the awful tragedy that was David, Sabrina's deadly love. The bizarre coincidence that she looked like Sabrina and he like David only made the entire situation more complicated. But not a drop of blood between them was Lord. He looked at her with his intoxication hazed eyes deeply and sincerely. He felt such a strong pull towards this woman from his own country of America, his face soft and peach toned, with the eyes so much like Sabrina, they were stunned his lonely heart. The man ran the story, told him over and over again in his mind of how he came to a place called Terramore House with her now ex-fiance Jonathan, how the family once had a son named David, whose wife Sabrina was killed, and how she, Genevieve, now had almost every single memory of Sabrina locked in her mind. He struggled to understand it all. How could it be? It sounded like a strange fictional tale, so outlandish that it could not possibly be true. Genevieve remembered she had an old photo of David and Sabrina, her tucked inside a small pocket in her bodice. She pulled out the photo, its edges frayed and slightly withered. For 2 months, tucked away, she extended her arm. The man showed him the photo. This is what I've been trying to explain to you. This, look, it's us. It's our faces, but it's not us. They look like you and I, Genevieve explained. The man shook his head in disbelief. It's not possible. I'm not a twin. You may be this woman's twin, but I am sure not his, the man said. No, you still don't understand. We're not their twins. We're, Genevieve replied with frustration. It's just some kind of coincidence. Something that happened, some odd parallel that you and I are both born looking exactly like two people in the photo. Sabrina, if she were alive today, would be 10 years older than me. David, 10 years older than you are. We're not related, but we are connected, and that's what I'm here for, to connect them. Asked, I thought I'd find him here, but I was wrong. I found you, another face, yet the same face. Maybe you and I were meant to meet, meant to help Sabrina and David finally get justice for what happened to them. Jacob Lord viciously killed Sabrina on the beach near their home and framed his own brother for this crime. David adored Sabrina, and he'd never do anything like that to her. Sabrina is dead. She can't fight back for them, and while David is forever a mystery, I don't know if we'll ever find him, but I have to do this. I have to adjust for them. She's part of me now, Genevieve said. Why? Why does it even matter to you? Jen asked. It's the right thing to do, don't you understand? For some reason, something in the universe made us look like them. Our paths have crossed, and we have to get them justice. It's what I feel in every bone in my body, and only you can help me. I don't know how I can help you, miss, the man said. Listen, I came all this way to find you, well, to find David. But I found you, and I gave up everything to do this. I left my home, my own son in America to do this for Sabrina. It's become my passion, Genevieve, become before you're out there. Sounds like more of an obsession. Don't you think, to leave your own kid? She lifted a brow. It was a very selfish choice, I admit, but I did it. Now I have to finish what I promised Sabrina. Promised Sabrina, the man asked you. You said she's dead. You said you never met her, and that you look like her, but you never met. How could you have promised her anything? I promised her in spirit. It sounds mad, I know. I hear it coming out of my own mouth, and I trust me, and I was never like this before I found myself at Terramore House. Something inside me now wants and needs to make this right for her. I'm connected to her. It's beyond my real understanding. She lives inside of me. I wouldn't have left my son so far away if I didn't truly believe this. Man thought about it. She didn't come off as insane, even though her story did. The spirit of a dead woman trying to find justice for her murder, her own look-alike. It's like from a fable, a gothic tale that would end in some kind of moral plot twist where all would finally be turned right by the very last page. But it was real life. She was real. She was flesh and bones. And she truly believed that she was meant to find justice for this woman. This man, David, whom he, the man in London, did in fact look like. Identically so. What if I agree? How would we help these two people? After a bit of thinking, I have a plan. Good one, she said. Looked at the photo again. And what is it, he pushed. Does this mean you're thinking about helping me, Genevieve asked. Maybe, he answered. It's been a very long time since I was home. I don't know if that's something I want to do, to go back there. I assume I would have to go back to help. She nodded. It's the only way. Man sighed. America. Why did you leave? She wondered. He turned away from her and shook his head. Doesn't matter, he answered. She could tell, but wasn't ready to talk about it. I'd like to at least know your name, so that I can't stop calling David in my head, Genevieve said, skillfully changing the subject. Turned back and flashed his sparkling smile. dimple just like in the left cheek. Christopher. Well then, Christopher, I am Genevieve. We have a lot to plan. He stared at her as she spoke in front of the burning stove. She was beautiful, that he knew for sure. Her perfect pink cheeks, her perfect pink lips were moved as she spoke, like she was mad for the most beautiful peach, maid. The tiny curls of her edges of long black hair twinkle in her green eyes. She was intoxicated. Inside his heart, he felt something that so sad he couldn't believe what he was seeing, the identical face of a woman, all dead. And he, the same as the man on the photo, he listened to her diabolical plan to finally get justice for Sabrina and David, was astonished as how detailed it was. More to come, she said, as she looked at the clock. It's late. You can stay here, Christopher said, handing her his coat. She smiled back sheepishly, repeated, more to come. She dressed in her warm coat, hiding her tiny frame from the cold London air, and set off back in the room she had been renting. He came to the door and yelled down the cobblestone street. Genevieve passed gas lamp after gas lamp. Fog. Come back for breakfast. She turned back to Christopher and laughed. More to come. With a loud gasp for air, as if she were back in her coffin again, Eve woke safely in her own bed. Is her old suit at Caramel. She had beads of sweat on her forehead, reflected light from fire in the hearth like little orbs of sunlight. Her mind quickly refocused on her little boy Gabriel, and jumped out of bed and headed to his room just across the hall from her to see him. He would push up in the little boy's room. To her shock, sitting there was Rebecca Lord, lulling the boy back to sleep. Davy gulped, remembering that Rebecca kidnapped Gabriel on the night of his birth and dangled him at the lighthouse. She was out of her mind. Then, lost in the fog, mind control set forth by the monster inside of Caspian. The image of Rebecca once again following the little boy, Evie, Lord, more than life itself, made her blood run cold. Rebecca, Evie whispered, and she slowly stepped into the dimly lit room. Rebecca smiled as she turned to face Evie and quickly read the express on the young mother's face as she alarmed her. It's not what you think, Rebecca said, as she extended her arms, handing Evie safely to his mother. Oh, he was crying as I was on my way to my own room to me. It's fine. It's a little fuzzy. Janet, thank you, he replied skeptically. You can go to bed now. I'm fine. I've been through something horrible. Something none of us can ever imagine going through. In fact, you're alive is a testament to how strong you are. But we all should have known you were strong after all. Since the day you set foot in this island, done nothing, seen nothing but darkness, tragedy, and persevered with all, Rebecca said. May I remind you who was responsible for all this? At least most of it, we shot back us, this family. I'm not denying it. I never was a time I'd do all. I would protect Jacob no matter how horrors he pushed on the world. I was wrong for it. It doesn't matter. He's my son. I should have stopped him and protected everyone. I should have protected you. Evie lifted a brow. It seems to me the only person you're seeing the light of day is now about Jacob is because he tried to do it to you. And if I recall, you're right again, Rebecca smirked, but it's the you say, better late than never. He took a breath. Have a good night, Rebecca, he said, dismissing Rebecca coldly. Rebecca, for her part, understood why Amy had yet to trust her. It would take a while before Amy could trust anyone around her, even around her child. But Rebecca was the type of person who never gave up when it comes to having her reputation sullied in everyone's eyes, even in the eyes of someone like Evie, a person she hurt so badly in the past. Just then Celeste walked into the room to check in on Gabriel, who she took custody of, while Evie was locked away, her children and son. Is everything all right? Celeste asked nervously as Evie turned so that her little boy was away from Celeste's grasp. Just a mother and child were equal, Becca replied. Maybe I should, Celeste said, stepping forward for Evie. Evie jolted back like a mother bear guarding her cub. Celeste, leave her. She is fully capable, Becca said. I'm Celeste again and again before being his aunt, replied. I am his mother, you are his aunt. I will take care of my child, us, Rebecca said. As Rebecca excused herself and Celeste leaving Evie and Gabriel, yet Evie turned to the little boy whose sparkling green eyes were blinking slower and slower into his little dream world. Daddy saved us, she whispered. He saved us and he'll never see you again. But he's safe, safe forever. He gave up everything to save us, my little sweet boy. Now you'll find him in only your dreams. Evie's mind flashed to the cemetery, frozen earth, Sebastian digging to free Evie. She flashed to breathing fresh air again. As soon as he saved her and kissing him and holding him on cold, hard ground, the sun of the new day was slowly peeking over the trees of the cemetery. She held on tight to him in the dawn. She kissed his cold face. She cried over him, her tears falling in his pale cheeks. Then, somewhere far off in the dark, cold place, Sebastian's eyes flipped open. And a single tear slipped out onto his cheek as he too was having the same memory as Evie was of that morning. Under the dark purple sky of dawn, he was out there, locked away on his own terms to save his family. Many more danger he would cause if he were free. Sebastian Lord had sacrificed his own freedom and agreed to be locked away somewhere in secret so he would never hurt ones he loved again. He was gone, but not the way others believed. Sebastian had Evie lock him away safely, and his location would remain a secret for as long as Evie would be alive, forever, lost to all, but not to one woman who loved him most. All right, that's the read along. Very, 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 very good. So Matthew Winterbourne is alive. The sailors recognized him. They mourned him. They were very sad. They thought he was dead. His memory is still fuzzy of certain things. Like he was dreaming of Evie. He was like remembering her. But there are things fuzzy to him still with his memory, which I think is going to be a factor. I do sort of wonder, and I don't want spoilers, because I know, the Matthew Winterbourne is a part of a special of people who have special abilities and stuff. I sort of wonder if at all, because he was still alive somehow. Again, he has special powers, special abilities. I wonder if this means his sister's coming back. I don't know, or if, maybe because the sailors talked about how other sailors survived and stuff. Not on the same ship as Matthew, but I wonder if Davy Jones is going to be mentioned at all. I don't know. We'll see. Uh, Not saying that's going to be the case. I do like Jacqueline Gray's plan, but it's not foolproof either. um, oh my god. Um, yeah, Philip's a werewolf, and his aunt's protecting him from not just himself but other people. It's not that she doesn't um, trust Mary. It's just she doesn't want Philip to hurt anybody, and that includes Mary or anyone else. That's why she has him locked in the basement. So we'll see. We'll see what happens. Link is going to be in the description box. Go check out the story, guys and gals.